Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 411. Success. In the manor, cauldrons were raised and each one had a deer demon guarding it and adding wood to the fire continuously. Within them, experts were being cooked, and a medicinal smell wafted out. Besides the cauldrons, there were also huge steamers in which experts were put to be steamed. Qin Mu patrolled around them and checked on the medicinal concoctions, changing the herbs a few times and applying needles to the experts whose divine treasures had been damaged. The hollow silver needles directed steam into their bodies. Emperor Yanfeng's body was covered in silver needles while he looked at Qin Mu with a black face. He was pressed down into the steamer by the youth, but then sat upright again to continue glaring. Qin Mu smiled and said, "Does your Majesty have anything to say?" Emperor Yanfeng's expression suddenly changed, and he said with a pleasant face, "Minister Qin has worked hard and his merits are high. Do you want a promotion?" Qin Mu was puzzled as Emperor Yanfeng's expression became even more pleasant. "You are still on the 5th rank now, but you have contributed so much. Improved our flying ships, crafted True Origin Cannon and Sunshot Divine Cannon, followed the Crown Prince to open irrigation works and transportation, and even saved me numerous times from danger. This time, you even brought Heavenly Feather Clansmen over. Your contributions are just too great, to the point I don't even know how to reward you. Tell me, what do you want?" Qin Mu scratched his head, racking his brain. "Your Majesty, the amount of money required for all the herbs which are needed to heal everyone is quite high. I also spent quite a sum to buy cauldrons, steamers, and silver needles. All that money was paid in advance by me, so can your Majesty." Emperor Yanfeng's face instantly turned black. "This is not considered a reward. Ministry of Finance has the money for it. The reward I want to give you is something Ministry of Finance can't give. What do you want?" Qin Mu thought about it for a moment. Money? He never lacked money. Official position? He didn't really have an interest in that. Fame? Heavenly Devil Cult Master was known throughout the land, so what fame did he need? Treasure? He had seized many treasures and even plundered dragon-rearing sovereigns' pouches. Hu Linger even got him 100 treasures from Roland's Golden Palace. He also had Carefree Sword and his sword pellet, so he didn't lack treasures as well. Precious herbs and materials, spirit pills, or miraculous medicines. He didn't need that as well because he was a divine physician himself. Qin Mu shook his head and finally understood how Imperial Preceptor felt. The things that the Emperor could reward him with didn't catch his eyes, so he didn't want any reward. "Think again." Emperor Yanfeng slowly guided him. "There's definitely something you want that I possess. It doesn't have to be an item or an official position, but can also be a person." Qin Mu came to realization and smiled with understanding. "So your Majesty is thinking of granting me some palace maids. I wander around most of the year, so I don't need any palace maids to serve me. However, Granny stays here and there are just demons and monster who are all ugly around here. If your Majesty can grant me some palace maids to tidy up the manor, I will definitely not reject. 2 girls like Zhen Qi and Qin Qi beside Empress Dowager would be just fine. They aren't bad-looking and are also gentle and understanding." Emperor Yanfeng was furious and lay down in the steamer. "Scram! As you command." Qin Mu closed the steamer while muttering under his breath. "Acting all generous, saying he wants to reward me, and then he can't even bear to spare some palace maids. What miser! What did you say? Say it once more." Emperor Yanfeng, who was in the steamer, was furious. "Off with your head." Emperor Yanfeng then heard Qin Mu complaining outside. "Yuxiu, you came at the right time. Your father said he wanted to reward me. Then he didn't want to reward me, and now he even wants my head. Why are you paying attention to him? He has been quite agitated these few years, wanting to off with this head and that head all the time. It's all from the stress of politics. In the end, even though he had said to off many heads, he actually didn't really kill many people. Ignore him, and he will calm down after creating a ruckus. Did you find me for dual cultivation? That's right. Our technique is almost complete, but delayed it to come and treat everyone's injuries. We need to hurry and beat the metal while it's hot. Otherwise, once father's injuries are healed and he decides to bring me back to the capital, I don't know when the technique will be completed. The two of them walked away, and Emperor Yanfeng, who was in the steamer, was disappointed as he thought to himself, "Shower, father can only help you this much. That brat is too dense, so you can only rely on yourself." After a couple of days working on it, Qin Mu and Ling Yusho finished tidying up the complete technique of 6 directions primordial spirit. They were slightly anxious as they didn't know if that technique would really allow others to cultivate their primordial spirit on 6 directions realm. "Let me try. I'm on 6 directions realm," xianxia said excitedly. Qin Mu shook his head. This technique is actually 2 techniques used as a set. It's separated into male and female, which have some slight differences. Because of that, 2 people must cultivate it together, and they can't be on guard against each other. They also can't have crooked thoughts, or they won't be able to cultivate their primordial spirits. But once it succeeds, both of them will succeed together. "Cult Master, train with me," xianxia said in a hurry. Qin Mu's voice became more serious. "Saintess, we need to be so intimate that nothing can come between us. We need to share mutual trust and have no crooked thoughts." xianxia giggled and said, "You're the cult master. How can I harbor any crooked thoughts about you?" Qin Mu rolled his eyes. "No crooked thoughts?" That little woman saw Granny C as an example, always thinking of how to replace the cult master without learning any of Granny C's good points. However, xianxia still had a side that was similar to that of Granny C, and that was whenever they met danger, she was always the first one to jump in and save people without hesitation. This showed that her nature wasn't bad. She just lacked a good upbringing. If she'd had such an excellent upbringing as I did, she wouldn't have ended up walking a crooked path. Qin Mu sighed ruefully. xianxia might have crooked thoughts, but he needed to confirm the technique that he and the princess had created worked. He nodded and said, "I can't do anything if you have crooked thoughts. I will believe you once, but only once. If it doesn't work, you can find another person you can trust." xianxia rushed excitedly to Ling Yusho and asked for the technique for women. Ling Yusho taught her without holding back. Yan Jingjing also came over, and Ling Yusho smiled. "Sister Jing, do you want to cultivate your primordial spirit with the one who herds cows?" Yan Jingjing shook her head. "I had cultivated my primordial spirit long ago. You too can cultivate, I will just look." Primordial spirit dual cultivation is very comfortable, Ling Yusho said seriously. Yan Jingjing's heart was moved, but she was also slightly embarrassed. xianxia then asked curiously, "Jingjing, what's your cultivation now? How did you cultivate primordial spirit this early?" "It should be divine bridge realm," Yan Jingjing said in a soft voice with some embarrassment. "I did not cultivate it, however. It's from Sun Ship. I'm a body of pure yang, and because I had control of Sun Ship and borrowed its energy for many years, I used it to open all my divine treasures. When I parted from Sun Ship before, my divine treasures would close back, but after using it many times, the divine treasures no longer closed." xianxia and Ling Yusho were stunned. Qin Mu also stared with eyes wide open, hardly able to believe it. Yan Jingjing's age was similar to theirs, but she was already an expert of the cult master level. They still couldn't see it earlier that Yan Jingjing was then the strongest among them. Qin Mu had also once driven Sun Ship and Moon Ship, but his divine treasures would close and seal up after he separated from the ships. Never would he have thought that after driving one numerous times, the divine treasures would remain open. In this case, does it mean that we can use Sun Ship to create a bunch of existences of the cult master level with Sun Ship? xianxia suddenly suggested. Ling Yusho shook her head. "Impossible. One needs to be the body of pure yang to become the Sun Guardian. Sun Herder tribe can't even find a second body of pure yang. So what is there to talk about other places? Cult Master can." xianxia immediately looked at Qin Mu. "Cult Master can control Sun Ship, and can most likely borrow the power of Sun Ship to open all his divine treasures in one go." Qin Mu's heart was pretty moved, but Yan Jingjing immediately said, "By borrowing Sun Ship to open divine treasures, it's easy for the realms to become unstable. Grandpa said this was an opportune shortcut, but it's not as solid as cultivating step by step. My trip this time is also to take a look at how you guys cultivate and see if there's any remedy. Qin Mu could only give up on that idea. Cultivating step by step indeed contained more fun and surprises. If he hadn't done that, he would have never discovered the god transformations of 5 elements realm or 6 directions primordial spirit. Yan Jingjing, who had opened up all her divine treasures with Sun Ship, might still have to cultivate from the beginning again, comprehending the meaning of every realm in detail to comprehend the marvel within them. Yet when the height one stood at was too high, it was hard to clearly see the bottom. Xianxia comprehended the female version of the technique, then asked Ling Yuxiu for guidance to make sure there were no problems with her cultivation of it. Only then did she start to cultivate her primordial spirit with Qin Mu. Far away, Blind said to Emperor Yanfeng with his eyes blindfolded, "Emperor, your daughter is pretty generous, giving your son-in-law away for Lassie Xiang to enjoy." Emperor Yanfeng snorted coldly. Xiu'er clearly doesn't understand the meaning of primordial spirit dual cultivation. She has no concept of that. If she knew primordial spirit dual cultivation could only be done between husband and wife, she wouldn't be that generous. "You are going to tell her?" Blind asked with interest. "There's no need." Emperor Yanfeng shook his head. "Only one couple can do primordial spirit dual cultivation. After their primordial spirits resonate with each other, there can't be a third person's primordial spirit resonating together. Minister Qin has already resonated with Xiu'er's primordial spirit, so even if Saint Xiang cultivates with him, they won't be able to achieve resonation of primordial spirits, and she won't be able to cultivate her primordial spirit. They are all just kids, so they don't know the real stuff." He sighed. Since ancient times, the Emperor's Chamber of Imperial Concubines has had 3,000 beauties, but no one knows that the Emperor also has imperial troubles. Only the Empress can resonate her primordial spirit with the Emperor, so even if the Emperor goes to love his other concubines, they can't resonate together and it's hard to ascend to extreme happiness. This is why there are not many people in the royal family. Blind smiled. When together with the other concubines, the pleasure isn't as great, so the younger generation of the royal family is lacking in numbers. Emperor Yanfeng nodded. "That's why I'm not worried about Xiu'er at all. She has already taken the opportunity, so even if Minister Qin has other women, he will still return to her side. That is because he cannot resonate with other Wa. My primordial spirit was cultivated." Si Yunxiang's cheers suddenly rang out, and Emperor Yanfeng's eyes went blank as he listened to Si Yunxiang frolicking around in joy. Ling Yuxiu was also overjoyed and celebrating with her, and so was Qin Mu. Emperor Yanfeng didn't come back to his senses even after a long while. "You forgot that Mu'er is the overlord body. Primordial spirit of ordinary spirit body cannot resonate with others once they have a partner, but an overlord body can." Blind propped himself on his cane and said calmly, "Emperor, I admire your expression very much, but I'm not a painter. Otherwise, I would draw it and admire it whenever I'm free." "I have painted it," Def said from nearby. The 2 old men chuckled, sounding very pleased with himself. "Cult Master, Princess Xiu, what's the name of this technique that you 2 have founded?" Si Yunxiang asked. "This kind of primordial spirit dual cultivation technique, let's call it Primordial Spirit Guide," Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu said in unison. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 412. A Storm is Brewing. Primordial Spirit Guide was devised by Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu by combining the theory of the most basic technique of Overlord Body 3 Elixir Body. Its basis rested in Daoyin technique, who was used to guide the vital qi. Meanwhile, Primordial Spirit Guide guided one's spirit embryo to mix with another person's soul before flying out of their bodies. The soul and spirit would then swap back, taking the chance to merge into primordial spirit. Therefore, the technique needed to have a guide word in its name. The reason why Qin Mu's primordial spirit could resonate with Si Yunxiang's primordial spirit was because of his spirit embryo. It had no attributes, which was unlike the spirit bodies of Si Yunxiang and Ling Yuxiu, who had their own attributes. The resonance between spirit embryos came from primordial spirits fusing and producing a fixed frequency. Because everyone's attributes were different, There would be greater or lesser differences in everyone's primordial spirits, and the frequency would be different. A couple dual cultivating their primordial spirits would resonate together and coordinate to be on the same frequency, forming a unique one for themselves. When they dual cultivated with other people's primordial spirits, they wouldn't be able to achieve resonation of the primordial spirits because they wouldn't be on the same frequency. Qin Mu's primordial spirit and spirit embryo coincidentally had no attributes of any spirit body, so it was like a white sheet of paper. When it dual cultivated with Ling Yuxiu, the frequency was Ling Yuxiu's frequency, and when he dual cultivated with Si Yunxiang, it was Si Yunxiang's frequency. Emperor Yanfeng had never experienced how weird Qin Mu's overlord body was, so he hadn't paid any mind to it, and thus didn't tell Ling Yuxiu about the taboo of the resonation of primordial spirits. Now he was full of regrets. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu finished up the male and female techniques of Primordial Spirit Guide, writing down the cultivation method and the method of replacing souls in detail. They were both very happy. Suddenly, they came to an indescribable comprehension. It not only concerned the Tao but also their Tao heart. By experiencing the process of founding the technique together, their Tao heart took a leap, a one-time qualitative leap. Could be said to be sudden, but it actually wasn't sudden at all. Creation was the hardest. They had created a technique out of nothing and changed the cultivation system of Six Directions realm and after, pulling primordial spirit to Six Directions realm. This change far surpassed the three basic sword forms that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had founded. It could even be said that if Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu could develop the marvel of Six Directions primordial spirit to the extreme, it was possible that this change could make people arrive at Celestial Being realm much earlier, fusing it with Seven Stars realm and changing the two realms into one. Furthermore, this change would affect all the divine arts practitioners of the future generations. Spirit Embryo realm and Five Elements realm were the realms of martial arts practitioners, the people who had yet to step into the door of divine arts. People on Six Directions realm could be called divine arts practitioners and be considered to have officially stepped through the door of divine arts. After Six Directions realm, there were Seven Stars, Celestial Being, Life and Death, Divine Bridge. All of them were realms that divine arts practitioners had to stride forward step by step to the realm of gods in the legends. The four realms were 4 steps, but each one was much harder than the previous, so taking each step took an extremely long time. What Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu had founded could possibly change 4 steps into 3 steps, allowing divine arts practitioners to reach the God realm in an even shorter time. This was a huge achievement and a great virtue to take part in creating such a technique. The world had no roads, so where many people walked, there would show up a road. The change in the cultivation system could cause the paths, skills, and divine arts to change. The great Tao of heaven and earth would also change according to it. The huge change Primordial Spirit Guide would bring was something the two youths did not expect. Founding a technique was difficult, so they had to comprehend a lot of matters. Their Tao heart topped those of great masters, and both of them sunk into their own comprehensions. The moment Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor founded the 3 basic sword forms was also the moment he became a great master. His frame of mind had also risen from technique to the realm of skill. What Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu were experiencing was the same kind of change. They could be considered to have completed Primordial Spirit Guide, but how to strengthen their primordial spirits on Six Directions realm was still a blank area to be explored. Strengthening their primordial spirit by cultivating was actually a matter of Seven Stars realm. No technique on Six Directions realm had a method to strengthen the primordial spirit, which meant that as the founders, they could be a step ahead of others in comprehending cultivation techniques of Six Directions realm, creating even more things. Emperor! Blind suddenly kicked Emperor's Yanfeng's thigh, not looking like he was joking. He said with a solemn face, "Do you feel a change in the heaven and earth?" Emperor Yanfeng wanted to blow up, but was too stunned by the words. He said in astonishment, "There's indeed an indiscernible change so strange. Deaf, cripple, wake up, carefully sense the great Tao of heaven and earth." Blind summoned deaf and cripple over, and the two old men also felt an indiscernible motion as though the spring rain was joining with the wind into the night. The action was mild and slow. "What happened?" Deaf asked in astonishment. When Moor and Princess Xiu founded Primordial Spirit Guide, this change happened. "How bizarre," Blind said. Sense carefully, the great Tao of heaven and earth seemed to be undergoing a marvelous change somewhere. This throbbing is very faint, but it can't escape my Tao heart. No matter if it was Cripple, Deaf, or even Emperor Yanfeng, they were all great masters. Cripple had comprehended the marvel of divine legs by himself to push his speed to the realm of God. What he used was the technique he had founded, so his Tao heart was also extremely strong. Deaf had pushed his painting path to the extreme, transcending to the level of God and saint. Emperor Yanfeng, in the meantime, relied on the not-so-outstanding Nine Dragons Monarch technique to develop it to the highest level in one go, making it become on par with the ultimate arts of the three big sacred grounds. Furthermore, Nine Dragons Monarch technique he had relied on was merely a few primitive dragon writings on the Emperor's disc. The other people in the manor, even if it were experts like Granny C, Yu Zhaoqing, and Empress Dowager, hadn't reached that frame of mind of a great master. Thus they naturally couldn't sense the throbbing and indescribable change in the great Tao of heaven and earth. Your Majesty, your daughter's accomplishments in the future are going to surpass yours by far, Deaf suddenly said. Have you ever thought of making her the crown prince? Emperor Yanfeng was slightly stunned as he looked at Ling Yuxiu, who had sunk into an ineffable realm. Making Princess Xiu the crown prince? He did have that kind of thought at that moment. Have Yuxiu head to the border army to train for a period of time. There is still some rebel army left in the snow plains in the north which haven't yet been eradicated. Let her and Yushi lead an army each. Emperor Yanfeng's heart calmed down. It wasn't that there had never been a crown princess before, but just that their numbers weren't as high as those of princes. After all, there were plenty of female divine arts practitioners, and some of the sects even had women as sect leaders. With that, it was easy to see that there could be empresses, it was just that they were in the minority. If Xiu could do better than Yushu, Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu woke up from their comprehensions. During them, they had comprehended numerous marvels about the primordial spirit, and it resulted in cultivation methods for it on Six Directions realm. Some could be written down for others to learn, while some could only be comprehended by oneself. They could be understood but not taught with words. Xiu, my injuries are almost healed, so follow me back to the capital city, Emperor Yanfeng said. Ling Yuxiu acknowledged him as her gaze landed on Qin Mu's body. The one who herds cows, are you going back to the capital with me? We can continue to dual cultivate there. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. You go ahead first. I need to wait here for Grandpa Butcher to come back. I still have some stuff I need to ask him. He handed a complete version of the male technique of Primordial Spirit Guide to Ling Yuxiu and said, hand it to Imperial Preceptor, so he will promote it. Ling Yuxiu nodded, then hesitated for a moment. Nine Dragons Monarch technique that you improved? Can I teach it to my father? It was your Ling family's to begin with, so just teach, Qin Mu said with a smile. Ling Yuxiu suddenly moved forward to give a peck on his cheek and ran away like an alarmed sparrow. Emperor Yanfeng shook his head and brought her to bid farewell to Empress Dowager. I didn't let the officials who followed me to come over, but had them stay at Overlord Prefecture. It's best for them to not know about all that happened in this manner. Mother, take care of yourself. Empress Dowager sighed and said solemnly, you have to take care of yourself as well. What you and Imperial Preceptor want to do won't end with simple death, so you have to be careful. Even though you have already grown up, I'm still worried about you. Emperor Yanfeng turned around to leave, and Ling Yuxiu followed after him. Father, the one who herds cows taught me Nine Dragons Monarch technique, which is different from what you taught me. I would like to teach it to Father. Does Father want to learn? Emperor Yanfeng laughed out loud and shook his head. Even though your little lover is overflowing with talent and has extraordinary abilities, having accomplished an astonishing feat with you this time, which made even me feel ashamed for being inferior, it's not enough. When it comes to Nine Dragons Monarch technique, your little lover is way inferior. The technique he learned was still taught by me. Are you learning or not? Ling Yuxiu asked with anger in her voice. Okay. Tell me about it. Ling Yuxiu told him about the Nine Dragons Monarch technique that Qin Mu had taught her, and Emperor Yanfeng's expression became more and more solemn. When she finished, his face was black as he asked coldly, he taught it to you? Ling Yuxiu could feel his overflowing murderous intent and couldn't help shuddering. Father! Emperor's disc is on him. Emperor Yanfeng's face was filled with fury as he laughed from extreme anger. This is a technique comprehended from the Emperor's disc. The treasure of our Ling family was on your little lover all along. I shall now. He was about to fight his way back when he suddenly stopped in his footsteps and gazed at the snowy white manor. He stared blankly at it for a moment before shaking his head and saying to the flustered Ling Yuxiu, "Return to the capital. Emperor's disc is with him, so I'll go ask him for it." "Father, don't be angry." Emperor Yanfeng shook his head. "I have examined that piece of Emperor's disc for thousands of times, yet I never comprehend anything out of it. The ancestors of Ling family have also examined it countless times, yet never found the marvel within it. The throne doesn't belong to Ling family due to that Emperor's disc. There's no need to completely fall out with Heavenly Saint cult." Ling Yuxiu sneaked a look at his face. Emperor Yanfeng looked calm, like water without any ripple. His true intentions were unknown. "Shower, never mention that Primordial Spirit Guide was founded by you and Minister Qin. This matter cannot be told to anyone," Emperor Yanfeng said solemnly. "If you say it, I won't be able to protect you." Stunned, Ling Yuxiu still nodded silently. In the manor, Qin Mu went to check Blind's eyes. The injuries on Blind's legs had already healed, but his eyes were still wrapped with ribbons which had to be removed from time to change medicine. "Muer, regarding that matter of founding Primordial Spirit Guide, don't say you've done it," Blind suddenly said. "Everyone who saw it must keep their lips sealed, so no word would get out." "Understood." Qin Mu was puzzled. "Why?" The ribbon was undone, and Blind gradually opened his eyes. They had no spirit, but slowly, their black pupils filled with divine light. Layers and layers of formation markings swirled in them, and incomparably deep 9 heavens took shape. Blind's voice was abnormally calm when he spoke next. "The law has changed, the path has changed, and the heaven has also changed. The change of heaven will result in death. All the great masters in the world will sense a motion that's out of ordinary. A storm is brewing." Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 413. Astonishment at the State of the World. In the capital, Elder Fu went into Imperial Preceptor's manor in a fluster to report, "Old Master, His Majesty is here to visit." Imperial Preceptor rose to welcome the guest, and the two heroes of Eternal Peace Empire met. Ling Yuxiu came after Emperor Yanfeng, who gave his friend a deep look. Understanding his meaning, Imperial Preceptor waved his hand for Elder Fu to fall back. "Your Majesty came to find me before even going to the palace, so something big must have happened." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked with inquiry at Ling Yuxiu. "There's only 3 of us here, so your Majesty can speak." "Did Imperial Preceptor felt it?" Emperor Yanfeng asked. 5 days ago, the fluctuation of heaven and earth." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded. "It was a very marvelous fluctuation. The law changed and the path changed, and there was an abnormal change in the great Tao of heaven and earth as well. Someone created a reform and it touched me greatly." Emperor Yanfeng took out the 2 version of the technique of Primordial Spirit Guide and handed it to him. "Imperial Preceptor, take a look." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor flipped through the pages in detail, his expression growing more and more solemn. After some time, he closed Primordial Spirit Guide and said, "It's Princess and Cult Master Qin's handwriting. 6 directions as reform changed 7 stars, celestial being, life and death, and divine bridge, so no wonder there was such a huge motion. Princess Xiao is not bad. Her achievements in the future won't be inferior to yours and mine." He was extraordinary wise and didn't need Emperor Yanfeng to give him a hint to know that it was made by Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu. On top of that, he also guessed what consequences their work would bring. Emperor Yanfeng nodded. "The source of the reform comes from these 2 scrolls. I came to find you without stopping for rest because the situation is grave. The effect is still very mild, so those who aren't great masters who had reached the level of skill won't be able to detect it. But for existences who had reached the level of the path, the effect is blatant. You said it touched you greatly, So looks like you entered the path a step earlier than I. I reached the path not long ago, so it isn't clear yet. However, that fluctuation flooded in like waves from all direction, and I was standing among them, experiencing that fine change of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Emperor Yanfeng listened carefully to his words and praised. The realm of the path is truly marvelous. You've been affected this much, so how would the gods feel? Even worse. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes shone with hazy rays as he said, Your Majesty wasn't in the capital these few days, so you don't know that memorials have been flying in like a flurry of snowballs. Your Majesty, please take a look. He took out dozens of memorials which were from various country magistrates all over the empire. Emperor Yanfeng opened one which was by the county magistrate of Initiate Peace County. It said that an earthquake had happened at Grandma Chiyu Temple. Other places had no tremors, except for Grandma Temple which had collapsed, crushing over a dozen believers. When Initiate Peace County magistrate brought a group of people to clean up the debris, they saw that the mountain on which the temple had been built had split apart. In the huge crack there was a god statue of a giant's upper body. It was the color of flesh, and the light of runes flowed across its body. Emperor Yanfeng frowned slightly as he thought for a moment. He passed that memorial to Yushio and picked another one for himself. It had been sent by the magistrate of Bent Prefecture and spoke about strange incidents happening at Great Bent Lake. When it was midnight, abnormal lights would burst into the sky from the lake, covering its whole surface. There was a huge life form rising from the lake with eyes like lanterns. It was said that it was Bent Lake Sovereign which wanted the people at the shore to offer virgin men and women as tribute. The magistrate sent his bailiff to investigate, and numerous divine arts practitioners had already died. Emperor Yanfeng's brows tensed up as he flipped through the other memorials. Some were about shrines splitting apart, with extremely ancient god statues appearing and shattering the god statues that the people were worshipping. Some spoke of earth shakes and god statues rising in riverbeds. Some of those statues didn't move, but others demanded tribute from people living in their region. There were also numerous places that burst forth with strange lights or had strange creatures appear in their territory. However, no one could take them away. There's no such gods in our eternal peace empire. Ling Yushio looked through the memorials, then placed them down. She pondered over what she'd read before asking, where did those god statues come from? They definitely couldn't have just popped out from the ground. Also, the treasures mentioned in the memorials don't seem to have been left by someone, for they are treasures of gods. Not from underground, Emperor Yanfeng said. If they had existed underground, they would have been found long ago. Those stone statues and treasures should have come from another world. It should not be just one world, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said solemnly. Great ruins have similar stone statues, and rumor says that they are gods who had petrified their bodies. They are in slumber, waiting for something, but they can transform back into their real bodies anytime. If these stone statues came from another world, the timing they chose is very peculiar. Princess and Cult Master Qin created Primordial Spirit Guide, changing the great Tao of heaven and earth, and the next moment, numerous stone statues and strange treasures appeared all around the world. There's definitely a connection between them, Emperor Yanfeng said. Imperial Preceptor, the origin and aim of those stone statues have to be investigated. This reminds me of the incident 2 years ago when Dutian Devil King descended. Back then, he relied on Cult Master Qin's sacrifice and a sacrificial altar to be summoned into our world. Furthermore, only his consciousness and part of his power had come to eternal peace, since his body required even more deaths and live sacrifices. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yushio listened quietly without interfering. What Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor wanted to say was extremely important, so they couldn't be careless. This means that traveling through different worlds requires an immense amount of energy. The stronger the existence that is traveling to another world, the greater the energy required. Since the great Tao of heaven and earth changed, the stone statues of those gods descended. Yet they should have only been able to send their stone statues over, while their power is unable to transfer for the time being. They need countless sacrifices of flesh and blood to call over their true bodies. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yuxiu's hearts stirred as a terrifying thought suddenly formed in their heads. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor helped them by saying it out loud. They need to create a large-scale natural disaster for many people to die, for only then could their true bodies come to eternal peace. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yuxiu's blood ran cold. The previous natural disaster had already caused countless people to lose their lives, and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had yet to recover from his encounter with the god. If another natural disaster was to happen, the empire was definitely going to fall into ruin, and countless living beings would fall into utter misery. According to my guess, the gods of high heavens will soon receive an order to send disaster for our eternal peace, Imperial Preceptor said solemnly. This natural disaster will definitely not be inferior to the snow disaster before. It can be an earthquake, eruption of volcanoes, tornadoes, floods, or even snow disaster or drought. As long as it's a disaster that can kill billions of people, anything is possible. Emperor Yanfeng croaked out in a hoarse voice. What you mean is, eradicate high heavens, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said indifferently. We need to eradicate the gods of high heavens, since if I didn't guess wrong, the ones in charge of sending disaster to this world is none other than high heavens. If we get rid of it, all the stone statues around the world won't be able to transform into gods or devils, and the people will then be spared from death. We need to make a move first, eradicating all the gods of high heavens. Emperor Yanfeng felt a splitting headache. He raised his hands to hold his head and gritted his teeth. High heavens is in West Earth and we don't know how many gods and devils they have, so how would we gain the ability to eradicate high heavens? If we could wait a few more years, allowing more experts to patch their divine bridge and cultivate to the god realm. Your Majesty, they won't give you the time. If what I guessed is correct, the treasures mentioned in those memorials are meteorological weapons. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yuxiu's blood ran cold. Meteorological weapon was an idea suggested by Qin Mu. By keeping meteorological phenomenons, for example, snowstorm, hails, tornadoes, floods, volcano eruptions, and earthquakes, in bottle gourds, they could adjust the weather during normal times. If they were to attack enemy countries, they could also use the meteorological weapons to kill the enemy troops. The time Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had attacked the prairie, Pangong Tso had made the great shamans poison all the water sources. To get rid of the shaman poison and save the herdsmen of the prairie, Imperial Preceptor had then used bottled storms to make it rain for 10 days, which cleansed the land and washed away all of the poison. However, quite a number of herdsmen had drowned in the flood. Because of that, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had been accused of misconduct by the contrarians, which caused him some trouble. If he wasn't wrong and those treasures of gods and devils were all meteorological weapons, the gods of high heavens just needed to come over, and they would be able to activate them, releasing all kinds of meteorological phenomenon to cause grave casualties in Eternal Peace Empire. With that many people dead, the stone statues would receive enough flesh and blood sacrifices for the power of those gods and devils to flow in like a long river. Once the stone statues regained their true forms, a massacre would begin, and they would wipe out the whole world. I shall immediately send orders and command people to guard the stone statues and treasures. I can't let those things fall into the hands of high heavens. Cold sweat started rolling down Emperor Yanfeng's forehead, and he started walking to and fro. We definitely can't let them find them. Why are they doing this? Can't they just let the people of this world live better lives? I don't understand. The reform touches the benefits of the gods and devils. It changes the Tao, and the gods and devils won't be tolerated by it if they can't change accordingly, said Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. There is definitely an even deeper reason for it, but we are lacking too much information to deduce the truth. Your Majesty, I need Human Emperor to come personally. Emperor Yanfeng looked at him. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked into the distance and muttered, only when Human Emperor calls for it would all the sacred grounds and strong practitioners listen and join hands to wipe out high heavens. Only the Human Emperor that all the sects revere can make them follow him wholeheartedly. Ling Yuxiu was stupefied. Wasn't the current Human Emperor Qin Mu? Wasn't Human Emperor's seal in Qin Mu's hands? Based on that logic, didn't it mean that Qin Mu also had to attack high heavens? I'll go speak with human emperor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor rose and left. Qin Mu was cultivating his primordial spirit with xianxia at that moment, the two of them roaming around. When they came to a spot, a majestic mountain there suddenly split, and a huge stone statue rose from the depths of the crack. What's happening? Is this great ruins? The two of them were astonished. They suddenly smelled a fragrance, and their hearts couldn't help shaking. We had just lighted soul guide incense to come to play around, and it couldn't have finished that fast. Someone had to have blown the incense all the way to the bottom. Their primordial spirits were summoned back into their corporeal bodies. Qin Mu opened his eyes and saw village chief, butcher, mute, and even old Ma. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 414, Stone Statues. Qin Mu was astonished. Since Butcher had come back, village chief and the rest should know that Xing'an had attacked and got severely injured. With the danger of Xing'an solved, it was a surprise that old Ma didn't remain in Great Thunderclap Monastery, but instead came with village chief and the rest. Village chief, Xing'an. Village chief shook his head. Xing'an's matter is insignificant. I've called you back because there's something important. Are you able to contact Heavenly Devil Patriarch? Qin Mu's heart stirred as he said, Did something big happen? Patriarch and Elder of Discipline left to roam the world and said that Elder of Discipline would bring his ashes back after he died. Village Chief, what exactly is going on? Saintess Xiang and I discovered something weird when roaming just now. A mountain split apart and a stone statue rose up. Are you here because of that? Xianxia nodded repeatedly as she added, That stone statue was very terrifying and seemed to be growing out from the mountain, rising upward quickly. There's not only one stone statue. Old Ma gave others a feeling that his wisdom was smooth and round like a pearl. Stone statues have appeared all around the world, and there is about 100 of them. There are numerous strange treasures as well. These objects have all appeared suddenly and are things that are not from our world. Some stone statues had burst from under Mount Meru, hitting it, but they didn't split it. Instead, they were suppressed. Qin Mu had a weird expression. Mute's expression was grim as his fingers jumped rapidly to make weird gestures. This kind of stone statue is a sign that the gods and devils are descending. Def looked at his hands and said, The gods and devils from the other world can't cross the world barrier easily, so they chose to petrify themselves into stone statues that have no energy to send themselves over. With this, their primordial spirit and magic power would remain in their respective worlds. If they wanted to regain their body of flesh and blood, they would need blood sacrifices to summon their primordial spirit from another world. We saw a few of the treasures on the way, and they are meteorological weapons used to draw great calamities for massacring the populace. Don't look at me. That's what Mute is saying. Everyone looked at Mute and village chief couldn't resist asking, How do you know so much? You understand all of it even better than I do. Mute grinned, signaling with his hands. Def then said, This guy is acting mute and deaf again. I didn't understand what he signaled. This matter is too terrifying. From what I see, there's no need to find Patriarch or anyone else. Let's return to Great Ruins immediately. Granny C said. So many stone statues had appeared in eternal peace, and once they revive, who can defend against them? Old Ma, don't be a Rulai anymore. Let whoever wants to take over. I also don't want this manor anymore, so let's just all return to Great Ruins immediately. Butcher shook his head and said, Granny, it isn't good to just leave like this, right? Aren't we going to be cowards if we hide in Great Ruins? A man should have an indomitable spirit and fight a vigorous battle. Granny C gave him a look and said coldly, If you aren't leaving, do you want to die? Do you want to return to before, living miserably with your upper body alone? Butcher's face flushed red from anger. I won't stoop myself to your level. Village chief coughed and said, Granny, human emperor needs to take on the responsibility. Take on the responsibility? Granny C smiled with extreme anger. Can you take on the responsibility? You couldn't yet, you still pushed Muir into the pit. If you have the capability, take on the responsibility yourself. Look at you now, hiding in Great Ruins like a rod and acting dead. Yet you still have the face to talk about responsibility. Village chief was too angry to even form words. You, what you? Granny C asked ruthlessly. There are over 100 stone statues. If you have the ability, go cut down all of them. Otherwise, you shall also go back obediently to great ruins and act dead like me. Deaf coughed and said, Granny, you're going overboard. How is it related to you? I brought Qin Mu up, cleaning his pee and poop. All you did every day was hit his palm with a black face. If it was not because you could write well and taught Muir to read, I would have beaten you to death long ago. Deaf stuttered from his fury. All right, Apothecary replied frankly and turned to leave. Mute knocked on his tobacco pipe and signaled. Ah! Shut up, you bad egg. Always full of mischievous ideas. Mute lowered his head, feeling extremely wronged. He stopped talking. Cripple opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but Granny C turned around to stare at him. Cripple then shuddered and laughed dryly. Why are you so fierce? We can discuss this peacefully, haha. Everything is good. Old Ma, say something. I listen to your words the most, so if you say to return to the village, I will return. Old Ma says go and I will go. Granny C glanced at Old Ma. If you don't return to Great Ruins, I will go to your Great Thunderclap Monastery, and you can see how many monks will be left in your monastery. Old Ma didn't say a word. Blind, say something. Village chief looked at Blind. If Muir wants to stay, then we shall stay. If Muir wants to return to Great Ruins, we shall also return. Granny C looked at him coldly, and Blind closed his eyes. Granny, if you want to take Muir away, they can't stop you, but I can. I brought Muir away once, so I know his resolve. We are all old, and if village chief won't manage to patch his divine bridge, he probably won't make it past next spring. So why do we have to strain our relationships? Just listen to what Muir has to say. Granny C's heart softened, and she looked at Qin Mu. In a gentle voice, she said, Muir, you are already a grown-up. The baddies of the village taught you to be like that, but you shouldn't learn bad from them. Follow Granny back. You shall marry any girl you like, and Granny will wait to carry her grandson. Qin Mu looked around in a daze before lowering his head. Xianxia looked around her surroundings, also slightly at a loss. She didn't know what was happening. Aunt is pretty awe-inspiring, scolding all these godlike existence into obedience. When can I become this impressive as well? After a moment, Qin Mu raised his head. These stone statues are like the stone statues of great ruins, gods and devils who had petrified themselves, but they had suddenly appeared because Yushio and I founded Primordial Spirit Guide. Those stone statues have came to wipe out eternal peace, right? In that case, the trouble is caused by me, isn't it? They are here to kill me? It might not have been caused by you, but Emperor Yanfeng killing Jade Sovereign of High Heavens with the cannon. Based on the timing, High Heavens should have reported that event to their masters. Besides, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yanfeng's reform would have brought this sooner or later, just probably several years later, Village Chief explained. This change doesn't rest solely on your shoulders, but also the reform. First, Emperor Yanfeng's cannon raised the attention of the Masters of High Heavens. Then, Princess Xiao and you founded Primordial Spirit Guide, which brought about some changes to the Great Tao. In that case, part of the reason is still me. Qin Mu pondered it for a moment, then said to Granny C, Granny, I'm not going back. I still have many friends here, like Wei Yong, Chen Wanyun, Mu Qingdai, and Yu Qinghong. I don't want to hear news of their deaths a few years later. Didn't you guys say it before? I should clean up after myself. Granny C was slightly stunned. Butcher taught you to be loyal, so you are really going to be loyal? What's loyalty going to do? Can it save your life? Qin Mu shook his head. It won't, but it will put my heart at ease. Granny C was first stunned. Then she sighed. At ease? I don't know if you'll still be able to feel at ease when Eternal Peace Empire is wiped out by the fire of war. But you have grown up and have your own ideas. Fine then, I won't force you. Invite Patriarch back. Qin Mu blinked and asked with curiosity, Why do I have to invite Patriarch? We old bones discussed and felt that high heavens would come to activate the treasures which broke out from the earth and release various natural disasters, using the resulting deaths as sacrifices to bring over the gods whose stone statues have risen in eternal peace. To stop that, we discussed a plan to attack the high heavens to prevent their actions. Since those statues are the bodies of gods and devils, why don't we just smash them? Qin Mu asked in bewilderment. Once the gods and devils petrify themselves, they become incomparably tough, too hard to shatter, Blind said. Have you ever seen shattered stone statues in great ruins? Qin Mu pondered over it, realizing that it was indeed the case. He had roamed around in great ruins numerous times, but rarely seen shattered stone statues. However, he had seen numerous Dragon King statues whose heads had been severed in the East Sea. That time, it should have been the Heavenly King of Heavenly King Temple. He'd ridden the Dragon Qilin to quell the rebellion in the East Sea, using green dragon crescent blade to sever the heads of Dragon King's stone statues. Can we move the stone statues to great ruins? Qin Mu asked. If we move them to great ruins and place them near the stone statues there, we wouldn't have to worry about them reviving and created a ruckus. Cripple smiled and said, carrying a stone statue is like carrying a god. Who can carry a god and walk tens of thousands of miles to great ruins? Besides, it's not just one or two, but over 100. Qin Mu frowned. The god statues were indeed terrifyingly heavy. An existence like Old Ma would have to rest after walking just 1,000 yards. On top of that, Old Ma was a person who had a strong corporeal body. Saint Xiang, what method does the sacred cult have to contact patriarch or elder of discipline? Qin Mu turned his head to ask the girl. My C family has 2 heart inspection mirrors which act as a pair. By mumbling the other person's name and imagining their voice and appearance, one is able to contact another person, seeing them and hearing their voice. Patriarch and elder of discipline have 1 such inspection mirror, so it's simple to contact them. I shall go inform elder lady and get her to contact patriarch. There's still a toy like heart inspection mirror in the sacred cult? Qin Mu said in astonishment. Xianxia rolled her eyes at him. You became the sacred cult master 2 years ago, and how many times have you gone to Saint Arrival Mountain? The sacred cult C family, you family, Sure family, have you visited them? If you weren't a decent cult master, I would have long rebelled against you. Qin Mu smiled. You don't have the ability. Xianxia was driven mad, but could only contact the great-grandmother of C family. She wanted to be as awe-inspiring as Granny C, but the brat didn't give her face, giving her no chance to become impressive. Grandpa Butcher, the sun, moon, and stars in the sky, the Milky Way, and the constellations are all fake. Qin Mu came to Butcher's side and said, Grandpa Butcher should know numerous secrets, right? Butcher pulled out his pig slaughtering knives and grinded the blades against each other. When talking about this, I can't not talk about the martial art I founded. Every cloud has a silver lining. Back then, I was a great master of the battle techniques, and all I wanted to do was to create an ultimate art that had no comparison. Back then, I was overflowing with confidence and felt that I was invincible in this world, that any divine art could be destroyed with 1 knife strike. However, I had never fought with heaven before, so I wanted to split the sky and jump out to fight with heaven. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 415. Talented in both literature and painting. Back then, Butcher was a maniac. He was overbearing, invincible, lonely, and full of ambition, instead of being rough like right now. Not only was his knife skills superb, he was also knowledgeable, and the poems he wrote were bold and unrestrained. He was also a gifted scholar that was renowned at that time. His knife skills were called Heaven Knife, and he was also named after them. His every move was filled with poetic quality, speaking his mind and emotionally unrestrained. If disabled elderly village was ranked according to their literary talent, the first would be Deaf, but the second would be Butcher. Even though he'd grown crazy and spewed vulgarities, he was a famous literary giant back in the day. At that time, he had challenged nearly all of the experts, including even Pan Gongtso. The Grand Master of Roland's Golden Palace could only hide, not daring to face him. Butcher was enormously proud of his success, and besides an annoying disciple, His life was already complete. Of course, his disciple was also very remarkable. He was called Ba Shan and known as He Gem and Knife. For over 4 or 5 decades, wind and rain clouded the sky. As transient as a fleeting cloud, every cloud had a silver lining. One should not think about boasting, for after the crisis comes hope. When looking at the sky and sea, a journey taken seems but a smoke. Butcher created every cloud has a silver lining, and the battle technique school was pushed to a height at which it had never been. At that time, many people learned the way of the knife in the martial world, and the battle technique school became mainstream, suppressing spell divine arts and sword technique divine arts. It was at that moment that Butcher finally couldn't resist attacking the sky. He wasn't a person like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor with his reform, but a person who wanted to fight to his heart's content. After I founded that move, I immediately tested it, and the knife sliced the sky apart. Butcher swung his knife, and the knife skill he executed was none other than every cloud has a silver lining. He didn't unleash any power with this move, but only executed it once. He then pulled back his knife, his expression weird. He composed himself, seeming to be reminiscing about the period when he had become deranged. I saw a strange sight. The sky split open, but there were no stars behind it. I was very careful and didn't go up to check. Instead, I found a few like-minded friends who were all proficient in algebra. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. Butcher actually knew how to be careful. He was the one with the worst temper, the one who would go straight into things, slashing down as he swung his knives. This kind of personality should be a facade purposely created by Grandpa Butcher. Those who believe he is a boorish fellow should have all died, Qin Mu thought to himself. Then, I slashed toward the sky with my knife again. My algebra friends should have calculated the thickness and height of the sky, but there was a problem that time. Butcher fell silent. After a moment, he said sorrowfully, "My friends died. In the tear that I had slashed open, an eye appeared. A huge eye, a weird eye. When it looked at us, I felt my soul throbbing as though it was going to be pulled out of my body. However, my corporeal body was extremely strong and my heart suppressed the throbbing along with my primordial spirit. However, my good friends didn't manage to do that. The corners of his eyes twitched, and he fell silent again. I didn't go up to the sky to find the owner of that eye immediately. Instead, I brought the corpses of my good friends back to their homes, letting their families arrange for their funerals and bury them." Butcher fell into a daze as he spoke. I knelt down and begged for forgiveness, especially from the family of my sworn elder brother. Elder sister was a very nice person, but she gave me a slap. She then told me to get out and leave for as far as possible instead of taking revenge. I knew the meaning of her words. If I went and take revenge, I would definitely die. But I still went. He revealed a smile and said to Qin Mu, "My friends, my elder brother, all of them had died without knowing how it happened, and it happened because of me, so how could I not take revenge? A man 8 feet tall, full of muscle, with heroism in his chest, and big knives in his hands, how could he not take revenge? Not do what his heart said? Elder sister cherished me and didn't want me to die, but my knives and my heart were upright and plain-spoken, so I had to take revenge. That was why I carried my knives up to the sky." Hehe. Many people said I was a lunatic, right? Qin Mu nodded silently. "There's no such gods in our eternal peace empire." Ling Yuxiu looked through the memorials, then placed them down. She pondered over what she'd read before asking, "Where did those gods' statues come from? They definitely couldn't have just popped out from the ground. Also, the treasures mentioned in the memorials don't seem to have been left by someone, for they are treasures of gods. Not from underground," Emperor Yanfeng said. "If they had existed underground, they would have been found long ago. Those stone statues and treasures should have come from another world. It should not be just one world," Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said solemnly. "Great ruins have similar stone statues, and rumor says that they are gods who had petrified their bodies. They are in slumber, waiting for something, but they can transform back into their real bodies anytime. If these stone statues came from another world, the timing they chose is very peculiar. Princess and cult master Qin created primordial spirit guide, changing the great Tao of heaven and earth, and the next moment, numerous stone statues and strange treasures appeared all around the world. There's definitely a connection between them, Emperor Yanfeng said. Imperial Preceptor, the origin and aim of those stone statues have to be investigated. This reminds me of the incident 2 years ago when Dutian Devil King descended. Back then, he relied on cult master Qin's sacrifice and a sacrificial altar to be summoned into our world. Furthermore, only his consciousness and part of his power had come to eternal peace, since his body required even more deaths and live sacrifices. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yuxiu listened quietly without interfering. What Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor wanted to say was extremely important, so they couldn't be careless. This means that traveling through different worlds requires an immense amount of energy. The stronger the existence that is traveling to another world, the greater the energy required. Since the great Tao of heaven and earth changed, the stone statues of those gods descended. Yet they should have only been able to send their stone statues over, while their power is unable to transfer for the time being. They need countless sacrifices of flesh and blood to call over their true bodies. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yuxiu's hearts stirred as a terrifying thought suddenly formed in their heads. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor helped them by saying it out loud. They need to create a large-scale natural disaster for many people to die, for only then could their true bodies come to eternal peace. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yuxiu's blood ran cold. The previous natural disaster had already caused countless people to lose their lives, and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had yet to recover from his encounter with the god. If another natural disaster was to happen, the empire was definitely going to fall into ruin, and countless living beings would fall into utter misery. According to my guess, the gods of high heavens will soon receive an order to send disaster for our eternal peace, Imperial Preceptor said solemnly. This natural disaster will definitely not be inferior to the snow disaster before. It can be an earthquake, eruption of volcanoes, tornadoes, floods, or even snow disaster or drought. As long as it's a disaster that can kill billions of people, anything is possible. Emperor Yanfeng croaked out in a hoarse voice. What you mean is, eradicate high heavens, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said indifferently. We need to eradicate the gods of high heavens, since if I didn't guess wrong, the ones in charge of sending disaster to this world is none other than high heavens. If we get rid of it, all the stone statues around the world won't be able to transform into gods or devils, and the people will then be spared from death. We need to make a move first, eradicating all the gods of high heavens. Emperor Yanfeng felt a splitting headache. He raised his hands to hold his head and gritted his teeth. High heavens is in West Earth and we don't know how many gods and devils they have, so how would we gain the ability to eradicate high heavens? If we could wait a few more years, allowing more experts to patch their divine bridge and cultivate to the god realm. Your Majesty, they won't give you the time. If what I guessed is correct, the treasures mentioned in those memorials are meteorological weapons. Emperor Yanfeng and Ling Yuxiu's blood ran cold. Meteorological weapon was an idea suggested by Qin Mu. By keeping meteorological phenomenons, for example, snowstorm, hails, tornadoes, floods, volcano eruptions, and earthquakes, in bottle gourds, they could adjust the weather during normal times. If they were to attack enemy countries, they could also use the meteorological weapons to kill the enemy troops. Butcher stabbed the knife into the bull's neck and carefully peeled off the cowskin, while the deer demons fled in a panic. Death tumbled out from the cowskin and grumbled, "Butcher, you almost hurt me. The sky is like a painting, but it wasn't completely a painting. There were a sun, moon, and stars inside. They were all forged treasured. The painting instead covered the true sky and maintained the formations of the sun, moon, and stars for tens of thousands of years. You couldn't do that. Your cultivation is too shallow." Butcher pushed Pig's slaughtering knife back into its sheath and said, "Those gods in the sky should be the dogs guarding the astronomical phenomenon picture, and not the real gods. They are very strong and no weaker than those guys in high heavens. However, I didn't see the owner of that divine eye. He shouldn't be from this world. When I was investigating the astronomical phenomenon, he detected me and only then looked over. There was a picture that covered the whole world. The sun, moon, stars, constellations, and Milky Way were all formations that could operate by themselves. The thickness of the picture material was only 1,000 yards while its height was 10,000 miles. Qin Mu had a headache. Was this something that humans could create? Back then, I didn't manage to see past the sky. Butcher's face became sorrowful again as he said, "My knife had only sliced apart the astronomical picture, but I didn't slice open what's behind it. Back then, my corporeal body was terrifyingly strong, so I didn't die. However, I went mad. As a matter of fact, Butcher would still flare up from time to time, scolding the heaven, full of cynicism. The people of disabled elderly village were all people who didn't have a complete body from various setbacks while their hearts and corporeal bodies had suffered from psychological shock. They were more or less embittered. I could draw what I saw in the sky," Butcher said. "However, my drawing isn't as good as that of Deaf. Moore, give me a few days. I will draw down all the formations for you to take a look." Qin Mu was astonished. Butcher was rough and boorish, courageous and strong to the point he was like the reincarnation of a bull demon. On top of that, the stubble on his face was also incomparably robust, able to give off sparks when he shaved it with pig slaughtering knife. Such a boorish man was actually talented in both literature and painting, and he was even honored as Heaven Knife. Deaf, on the other hand, wasn't astonished. In our village, the one most lacking in culture is blind. Butcher's literary works and paintings are all first-rated. It's just that he didn't put all his heart into them, or else he would have left his name in history as well. Qin Mu looked at Blind, only to see him staring at Deaf with shining eyes. The next couple of days, Butcher cooped himself up in his room and painted continuously. Qin Mu didn't go and disturb him. xianxia in the meantime managed to contact the young patriarch and came to report to him. Patriarch had gone to West Earth, but he's on his way back. Qin Mu was astonished. Patriarch went to West Earth? Could he be looking for his old lover? At that moment, he suddenly heard a voice. "Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor seeks an audience with Human Emperor." Qin Mu turned around and looked toward the source of the voice while laughing loudly. "Why is Heavenly King so polite? Just saying that you are here to meet the cult master will do. Calling me the Human Emperor is too formal." xianxia was full of admiration. Cult master's level of thick skin is something I can never reach. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 416, with Human Emperors seal out. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked into the manor and looked around in astonishment. He praised, "When I finally retire after the success of the reform, I would also like to find a pleasant scenery like this to enjoy domestic bliss with my wife and children." Qin Mu welcomed him with a smile. "What has Heavenly King come here for?" "I'm not here as Heavenly Saint Heavenly King to meet Cult Master, but as Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to meet Human Emperor. May Human Emperor assist us." Qin Mu's expression instantly became solemn. "Imperial Preceptor, please speak." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked around before saying, "Where's old Human Emperor? Can I invite him over for a talk too?" Village Chief is basking in the sun and drinking tea. The two of them found Village Chief drinking tea with Apothecary. Numerous women surrounded them, holding the teacups to their lips, so the two didn't even need to stretch out their hands. The corners of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes twitched. Empress Dowager was among those girls. He immediately covered his face and pretended not to see her. He had always been at loggerheads with Empress Dowager, who had gone against him time and time again. On top of that, Little Poison King Fu Yuanqing poisoning her was also his idea. However, he was still a subject of the empire, so when he saw Empress Dowager serving a man like that, he naturally had to avoid it. Empress Dowager saw him and sneered, but didn't avoid him. Apothecary saw the situation and smiled. "There are too many mortal affairs here, so let us go elsewhere. I know a place with an extremely beautiful scenery. Bring your musical instruments so we can go there and play." The women danced and sang in delight as they left with him. Only then did Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor move his sleeves away from his eyes and greet Village Chief. After Qin Mu sat down, he also followed. Abnormal events have been happening in Eternal Peace Empire one after another. Numerous treasures and 100 stone statues had appeared, but this shouldn't have escaped from both of your ears, right? I'm sure I don't have to explain the danger of it to the two human emperors. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went straight to the main point and said, "My visit here is to ask Human Emperor to take out Human Emperor's seal to command all the heroes of the world to wage war against high heavens, to prevent the people from suffering again." Village Chief looked at him peculiarly and asked, "Has Imperial Preceptor ever been to high heavens?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. "If you knew the true power of high heavens, you wouldn't think this way. Back in the day, I took all the heroes under my command and planned a life-and-death struggle with high heavens at West Earth, but it resulted in only me losing my arms and legs. High heavens don't only have the 4 sovereigns of high heavens, but other fake gods as well. The 4 sovereigns are nothing to be feared, but you will meet a real god, a true god." His old face was filled with wrinkles that were very deep. There seemed to be an old farmer who had his back toward the sun in them, the wrinkles themselves being the land he plowed. "A true god who is God realm in every aspect," Village Chief said calmly. "My sword skill lost to his sword skill, and he severed my legs and arms. Human Emperor? Che!" That was what he said before throwing me away like garbage. He looked at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. "At that time, you hadn't been born for long, so you wouldn't know about this. The strong practitioners who had followed me either died, escaped, or disbanded. This human emperor had failed completely. I suffered an utter defeat. Your attainments in sword skill have already surpassed mine, even if your attainments in sword path are still slightly inferior to mine. However, if you go to high heavens, your end will be the same as mine." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor frowned. "In that case, what should we do?" "Don't go to high heavens, but intercept them," Village Chief said. "Whoever comes down has to be killed. One comes down, we kill one. All come down, we kill all. Don't worry about that true god. He needs a lot of flesh and blood sacrifices to come down. Back then, he managed to come only because a god of high heavens was used as a sacrifice. In that case," Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked at Qin Mu and asked solemnly, "May I ask for Human Emperor's seal?" Qin Mu took out the black lump, which was a seal. It was not eye-catching at all, but it was made from all the best treasures in all the clans and sections. They were forged into one and represented the authority of the Human Emperor. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and took out the seal. This action would mean that he, the Human Emperor, would be walking from the backstage to the front, bringing a lot of danger to himself. Like Village Chief back then, he had become the Human Emperor and had no choice but to deal with the life and death situation of the human race. There were many hidden arrows coming for it. According to the teachings of the people in the village, things like Human Emperor's seal had to be thrown as far away as possible, but the people in the village had also taught him to be responsible. All the 9 elders in the village taught him different things, which sometimes conflicted among themselves, so he had to choose and follow his heart. Qin Mu took in a deep breath and asked, "Village Chief, how do I use this seal?" "Pour your vital qi into it, then let us help you." Qin Mu pushed his vital qi inside, and it poured into Human Emperor's seal. The black lump seemed to have a kind of consciousness which activated and flowed out back to the owner. Qin Mu instantly felt an explosion in his head as though unyielding strong practitioners and their unyielding spirits had been hidden inside and were now rushing out at him. Dazzled, he thought he saw a bunch of people wearing ragged clothes walking toward him. Behind them were countless commoners of different races who belonged to every clan and sect of Eternal Peace Empire. They were the ancestors of the people of this land. Their faces had an emaciated look and held traces of hardship and the fire of war along with knowledge of many casualties. Their gazes were filled with sorrow and fear. They carried a history which would make people despair as disaster went through the land. The gods and devils had spread havoc, and it had been Human Emperor who had brought them out of despair, bringing them to this new land. Each of them had taken out their treasures and imprinted their consciousness inside them. The treasures were then smelted and forged into a huge seal before respectfully offered to that person. The one who wields this seal will be the Human Emperor, Their consciousness transformed into voices which exploded in Qin Mu's mind. With human emperor's seal out, none will disobey. Qin Mu's heart trembled. At that moment, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Village Chief released their vital qi to help activate the human emperor's seal. With a hum, it floated high up into the sky and gave off a radiant glow. The unyielding consciousness transformed into physical substance, and the apparitions of the patriarchs and emperors who founded sects and countries shone, imprinting their majestic figures on the heaven and earth. Terrifying consciousness rushed out in all directions, bringing to their successors of the same bloodline the summons, calling them to come forward. That was their promise, the undying pledge they made to the human emperor for his deeds. With human emperor's seal out, none will disobey. The promise the ancestors had made 20,000 years ago had to obey even after that much time had passed. After a moment, Village Chief and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor pulled back their magic power. Qin Mu dispersed his vital qi with his mind was surging. That was human emperor's seal, the treasure that all clans and sects had offered to human emperor together. It clearly had no power in itself, but it had an immense ability to rally supporters. Let us wait here for a few days. What will come, Village Chief said indifferently. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor agreed. May I ask how many experts will come? Strong practitioners of ordinary divine bridge realm won't be too useful. They will only be able to give up their lives even if they come. Village Chief smiled. Those that dare and can come will naturally be experts. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor still wasn't at ease. The experts of this world were usually in the sacred grounds, and those that could be on par with them were only Old Rulai, Old Dao Master, and the experts of Little Jade Capital. However, it stood aloof from worldly affairs while Old Rulai and Old Dao Master had retired. Those who could come were not that many in number. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. When I saw the apparitions just now, not all of them were humans. Some of them clearly belonged to others' races. I also saw numerous strange races, Imperial Preceptor said as well. Back then, the clans that human emperor rescued didn't consist of only humans. Some of them gave up this land of eternal peace to find other homes, in other territories. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor expression filled with astonishment. They went overseas? In East Sea, a huge island was moving slowly in the ocean. Within it lived a strange race. The men had horns on their heads and fished for a living while the women had no horns. When the men jumped into the sea, their bodies would shake and transform into those of huge whales. Their head would still, however, retain the sharp drill-like horns which they used to travel through in the water as though they were flying. The monsters in the sea were simply not their opponents. Every time there was a catch, the whales would jump back onto the islands, transforming back into men when they landed on the ground. They would then carry their catch to the village. Suddenly, all the people on the island could sense an ineffable call from their bloodline. They all looked toward a faraway land. The summon of human emperor's seal. In the shrine that was at the center of the islands, the heart of the elders in white throbbed as they shouted out, "Quickly, wake old ancestor up!" Ang! Melodious cries of a whale came from the bottom of the sea, and the island trembled, for it the back of a whale. When it was awoken, it spewed out a water pillar that was hundreds of yards tall. Far away, there were a few more islands floating around, also belonging to the huge whales. The people and palaces on one sea island flew up and left, coming to the other islands. That huge whale then gradually sunk to the bottom of the sea, and after a moment, a topless, long-haired, and sturdy man walked out from the sea and stepped onto the island. In the hall of Sea King, numerous elders in white were waiting. When they saw the sturdy man, they all bowed. King Kuan. The ancestor of Kuan race made a promise 20,000 years ago, and it still flows in our blood today. It is still within us. King Kuan surveyed the surroundings and said, "Human Emperor's seal is summoning me, so I need to go personally. Call the sacred artifact." Numerous elders in white split into two rows before a sacrificial altar in their hall of Sea King. Within it was a long, spiral-shaped golden horn which looked like a golden lance. King Kuan paid his respect and pulled out the long horn. Instantly, Huge waves splashed into the sky around the island, and the elders in white sent him off respectfully. King Kuan held the golden lance as he sprinted over the sea, transforming back into a huge long-horned whale that surfed toward eternal peace. Just as King Kuan leaped from the waves, a huge bird flew past him, its spread out wings covering an area of a few hectares. When that huge bird saw him, its body did a sudden spin and flew over like an arrow. Countless feathers fluttered in the wind as it transformed into a woman who landed in front of King Kuan. Her legs were talons, while on her head there was a victory headdress made from plumes. King Kuan smiled and said, "Queen E, you also came? Human Emperor has summoned us again, and we need to come and fulfill the promise our ancestors made. How can I not come?" Suddenly, the sea churned and a pitch-black tortoiseshell ship broke out from the bottom, leaping off the sea surface before smashing back down again. It swayed for a moment before steadying itself. "Raise the flags!" a voice called out on the ship. Whoosh! A huge drenched flag rose, revealing a tortoise and a serpent painted on it. In little jade capital, old Rulai frowned slightly and sighed. "I thought we could have some peace, yet here we are in need to leave the mountain so soon." Old Dao Master smiled and said, "If we don't leave the mountain, our successors will have to, and won't they be just seeking death? Let's go." Old Rulai nodded and sighed, rising to follow him out of Little Jade Capital. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 417, Great Terror. The sea was foggy in the early morning in Eternal Peace River Prefecture. What happened next, the guard stationed at that time wouldn't be able to forget even after many years. Grayish fog spread across the surface of the sea while a huge narwhal leaped out. Its body flew above them as though it was a cloud, covering the docks of River Prefecture. The whale then became smaller and smaller as it fell into the city. Before the soldiers could even come back to their senses, they saw another huge shadow sailing in from the fog on the sea. It was a tortoiseshell ship, with all kinds of shells crawling over its body. A black tortoise flag fluttered in the sea breeze. The huge ship sailed straight toward the dock, and just as it looked like it was going to crash into the dock, it suddenly lifted dozens of yards off the ground with 4 legs. The ship then walked in the air above the ships and rumbled into the city. Within it, the soldiers looked at the ship that was walking in front of them in a daze. They saw that it carried a flying serpent which had coiled around it and flapped its wings on the mast. If that wasn't enough, the soldiers on the ship also looked strange. They had a tortoise's shell on their backs as well as flying serpents coiling around them, forming a strange kind of symbiosis. Pond Prefecture also encountered a strange incident. That area was known for its 1,000 deep ponds whose bottoms could not be seen. On that day, the 1,000 ponds suddenly dried up, and the water and fish within them vanished all at once. Numerous people looked into the deepest one and saw that at its bottom there was actually a bronze door. Pond Prefecture magistrate ordered people to head down to check on the pond, and they reported, "The bronze doors at the bottom of the pond are locked with seals. They can't be opened." While the magistrate was baffled, the bronze door suddenly opened and a man covered in scales walked out. He turned around to lock the door, then shouted out, I know, annoying woman. Human Emperor has summoned me, so I'm only helping to fulfill our ancestors' promise. I won't be fierce and pick fights. You know that my temper is the best among us earth travelers. See what see? See me shatter your knee with one punch. I wasn't talking about you. I'm saying those country bumpkin giants above. I know to lock the door. You're being naggier than my mother. Pond Prefecture magistrate and the rest stood beside the pond while looking at a 5-foot-tall dwarf with a face full of beard carefully locking the bronze door before coming ashore. Pond Prefecture magistrate went forward and asked curiously, "This senior brother?" The dwarf covered in scales looked at him in alert. "Country bumpkin giant, don't lay your eyes on us earth travelers. We've made an agreement before that the surface belonged to you country bumpkins and the underground is ours." The magistrate of Pond Prefecture was flabbergasted when he heard the dwarf shouting into the pond right after. "Woman, release the water. Prevent these giants from stealing our underground world." Water started to pour into the ponds, and soon all the deep ponds were filled. The bluish jade ripples in the ponds were like scales, and there were many fishes in the water once more. Just as Pond Prefecture Magistrate was about to ask about it, the dwarf suddenly tunneled into the ground and disappeared. Pond Prefecture Magistrate and the rest were all stupefied. There are people living underground? How are they surviving there? Meanwhile, in Willow Prefecture in the south, which worshipped a lot of willow immortals, witnessed a willow tree transforming into a green dragon and flying away. Numerous weird incidents happened all around the world, causing quite a discussion among the commoners. Moor, these are the formations I saw that day in the sky. I didn't get to examine them in detail, so I can only remember this much. In the manner, Butcher passed all the sun, moon, and stars he had drawn during the 2 days to Qin Mu. The youth's scalp crawled when he saw what filled the hall. He picked up one picture Butcher had drawn which represented a star and saw that its structure was extremely complicated and looked rather mired in minor details. The star was Chief Star, and the picture of the formation faintly showed the black face and tusks of a ghost god which held a brush in one hand and a golden seal in the other. Under his feet was a fish-dragon sacrificial altar. Qin Mu then picked up another star picture, and it was Greedy Wolf Star. The formation showed the picture of a dragon turtle and with a sacrificial altar below its feet. He frowned and scanned the other pictures as well. Most of them had sacrificial altars formed by formations, while the inside of the stars had the shape of gods and devils. What exactly are these god and devil formations and sacrificial altars used for? Is it to operate the astronomical phenomenon or something else? Uneasiness filled his heart. If it was just to maintain the operation of the fake astronomical phenomenon in the sky, there was no need for them to be so complicated. The formations just needed to glow, and that was all. Since it could be so simple, why were they so complicated? The sacrificial altar and the white bone sacrificial altar that I used to summon Duqian Devil King are slightly similar to these. It's just that the formation structure is different. Qin Mu felt his blood run cold. There were countless stars floating in the sky, and there were countless sacrificial altars hidden in them, ready to summon gods and devils. If there was a great blood sacrifice one day and those gods and devils descended, how terrifying would it be when tens of thousands of gods and devils came to the mortal realm? Not to mention eternal peace. Even founding Emperor Era back in the day would have been destroyed, right? Eternal Peace Empire is absolutely not worth the effort to guard and supervise. So what exactly is this fake astronomical phenomenon guarding against? Qin Mu had numerous questions that he couldn't answer. The formations in the star pictures Butcher had drawn were all incomplete. He didn't have time to study the fake astronomical phenomenon before he suffered an attack by the gods guarding them. However, he had still managed to draw a rough layout. Qin Mu suppressed the astonishment in his heart and continued to examine the structure of the formations. His eyebrows scrunched up tighter and tighter, and he suddenly asked, "Grandpa Butcher, how are your attainments in formation?" "So I'm inferior to Blind," Butcher said honestly. "I shall go and invite Grandpa Blind to take a look." Qin Mu went to find Blind and asked him to look through the pictures. "These formations are very weird, and I have never seen them before. Grandpa Blind, have you seen something similar before?" Blind looked through the pictures one by one, with his face becoming more and more solemn. He shook his head. "I've never seen formation structure like this before. Weird, this is truly weird. The formations in these star pictures are used to construct the bodies of gods and devils, but they can also give off rays like the sun, moon, and stars. This kind of formation structure isn't simple. It's a pity that none of these formations are complete. The time was too short. I could only remember this much." Blind examined them in detail again and calculated. These formations construct the bodies of gods and devils, but they also break down the bodies of gods and devils. "Butcher, do you understand what this means?" Butcher pondered over it before saying, "What you mean is that if we have divine arts practitioners line up according to the structure of the formation, we can possess the power of gods and devils?" Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. Making the Qi cultivators line up according to the formation structure and activating the formation would be equivalent to gaining the power of a god or devil. If such a formation was activated, how astonishing would its power be? It's a pity the formations aren't complete. Blind shook his head and said, You have drawn so much, but none of them are complete. Other than that, there's another possibility. Astonishing rays burst forth from his eyes, and he walked out from the hall. He raised his head to look at the sky and muttered, "These formation structures may very well be the vital chi circulation of those gods and devils. The formation inside every star might be their complete technique. A huge treasure vault is up there in the sky, but it's a pity that I can't go there to take a look." Qin Mu's heart pounded heavily. A star represented a technique of gods and devils? How many stars and constellations were there in the sky? Didn't this mean that there were tens of thousands of techniques of gods and devils hidden in the sky picture? The ultimate arts of the three big sacred grounds, Tao sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery, and Heavenly Saint cult, were all revered as techniques that could turn one into a god, Buddha, or a devil. For them to stand until now and not fall, their effects were extraordinary. Yet in the sky, there were tens of thousands of techniques that were no inferior to the three ultimate arts. Just thinking about it made him excited. Yet after the excitement, what Qin Mu felt was fear and terror. Great fear and great terror. Hope the sky will never be dyed red by blood. Or else. His bones started shivering. When the sky of eternal peace was dyed red by blood, the sun, moon, and stars in the sky would transform into terrifying gods and devils to descend on the world. This would be the vision of doomsday, literally. Suddenly, Qin Mu sensed something and looked toward the east. He saw a huge tortoiseshell ship walking among the mountains. It flapped its serpent wings while its huge flag fluttered in the wind. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor also sensed some motion and looked toward the east. He saw a flood moving over like a huge wave upon which stood a topless, sturdy man holding a golden lance. There was also a woman in the sky with wings on her back. When they moved, wind and lightning surged, accompanied by the sound of thunder. They actually came. Village chief floated up and revealed an excited expression. "I'm old, but they have not aged. They are still alive." The tortoiseshell ship came next to the manor and suddenly stopped. A person with a tortoise shell on his back flew down. He belonged to the race of black tortoises. A flying serpent danced around on the huge ship whose bow trembled as a dragon head popped out. Flames and thick smoke spewed out from its nose and mouth while its eyes rotated around. It shouted loudly, "Black Tortoise Xianxia is here to meet Human Emperor." The sturdy man controlling the huge wave lowered its speed and landed in front of the manor with a whoosh. The wave behind him then vanished. "King Qin of Kuns is here to meet Human Emperor." The woman in the sky stilled her wings, and the wind and lightning all hid under her feathers. She then landed on the ground. "Queen E of Wings is here on invitation." Qin Mu immediately took out Human Emperor's seal and held it in his hand when he went forward to welcome them. "Fellow lords have come from afar, and I can't appreciate it enough. Please come into the manor to chat." King Qin, King Shi, and Xianxia were astonished. The black tortoiseshell ship suddenly trembled and became smaller and smaller, transforming into a majestic man with a tortoise's shell on his back and a serpent coiling around him. Human Emperor is becoming younger and younger. He was a middle-aged man in the past. He said in a soft voice, "Brother Xingwu, the Human Emperor you mentioned is most likely dead. Humans are not like us. They can't live that long," King Qin said. Xianxia let out a sigh of relief and smiled. That's good. That fellow looked for trouble for no reason. He was always embittered and called us to do this and that. What an annoyance." Village chief had wanted to meet his old friends, but he couldn't help freezing when he heard what they said. He seethed with anger. Suddenly, a voice came from underground. "Earth Traveler Chief Tuxing." "Aya!" The ground trembled, and a messy head popped out in front of the manor. There was a huge bump on it, and its owner roared in anger. "Which asshole refined the rock to be so hard?" Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 418, Earthquake Cauldron. The head was very huge, and the bump that had swelled wasn't small either. However, the person wasn't high when he tunneled out from underground. He was only 5 foot, and his face was covered with a scraggly beard that grew in all directions. Chief of Earth Travelers, this manor was constructed by the 4 sovereigns of high heavens. They put much of their capital into its construction. Qin Mu explained right away. Those wretches again. The dwarf jumped out and landed on the floor with a thump. Even though his body was short, he was astonishingly heavy. He raised his head and said, "Country giant, are you the human emperor? Did that haughty human emperor die already?" He didn't wait for Qin Mu to reply, unable to contain his joy. "That's good. Did he die miserably? He must have died miserably, right? Ha 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 ha. I knew that guy would die miserably, being so haughty every day, calling us frequently to counterattack. It would have been fine if it was just once or twice, but if one stands frequently beside the river, how can the shoes not get wet? The more he played, the sooner he should have lost. But now he's already dead, right?" Qin Mu turned his head back around, but he didn't see Village Chief. Village Chief was here moments ago, so where did he run to now? "I'm Tuxing Feng of Earth Travelers, the current chief. My ancestor was Earth Lord from founding Emperor era, and our whole family was this short. You should have seen the Earth Shrine in great ruins before, right? What they worship is the ancestor of our family." The dwarf was entertaining in conversation, and he also talked fast. "Our race is very good at giving birth, thus there were Earth Lords everywhere during founding Emperor era, and so were Earth Shrines. Every mountain had the gods of our Earth Travelers. However, among our people, the smaller you are the better. Ever since founding Emperor era ended, our bloodline has gotten mud, and we've been growing taller and taller. At my height, I can be considered a giant among Earth Travelers, and I would be despised by my ancestors. That reminds me, I have 28 brothers, but I'm the eldest. My second brother is called." Qin Mu coughed and said, "Everyone, please head inside." Suddenly, a demon wind swept over. 5 men and women with strange appearances stood on the pitch-black devil wind. "Chiefs of the demon race, 5 immortal elders are here on human emperor's invitation." Qin Mu was astonished. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went to stand beside him and said, "These 5 people are all of the demon race, and their abilities are extremely strong." Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. 5 immortals, fox, yellow, white, willow, and rat was a saying of the mortal world. Fox immortal was a fox, yellow immortal was a weasel, white immortal was a hedgehog, willow immortal was a snake, and rat immortal was a rat. The 5 of them were the chiefs of the demon race and represented the 5 elite races among the demons. The first-generation human emperor had even saved the demons when he was saving the people of the world back in the day, so even the chiefs of the demons offered their treasures when forging the human emperor's seal together. 5 guests, please." Qin Mu invited everyone into the manor and entered the main hall to take a seat. Village Chief also came, but as everyone looked at the old man who resembled a rod, they didn't recognize him at first. Other than Village Chief, Butcher, Mute, Blind, Old Ma, Cripple, Deaf, Apothecary, and Granny C also sat down in their respective seats. Tuxing Feng looked at Village Chief repeatedly, finding him quite familiar, making Village Chief slightly awkward. After a moment, Hermit Qing Yu brought he and Yu over and greeted Qin Mu before greeting Village Chief with a smile. "We are late. Little Qing Z, little Yu Z, and little Yu Z." Tuxing Feng couldn't contain his joy and jumped up to shout, "You guys are still alive? I thought you guys were dead. Little Qing Z, your relationship with the previous human emperor was quite good. Has that scoundrel died?" Hermit Qing Yu looked slightly awkward when he pointed to Village Chief. "Isn't old human emperor still around?" Village Chief was ashamed, wishing to hide somewhere. Tuxing Feng and the rest laughed out loud and went forward to greet him. "We long recognized you, but we just wanted to tease you. Even though you frequently called us over, we missed that time we spent with you. To be able to fight with you during our years was our greatest honor." Village Chief was suddenly full of tears and choked on his words. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was deeply moved. The previous generation Sword God had so many close friends, which was something he could not hope to reach. Old Rulai and Old Dao Master arrived as well, and everyone was lively again. Humans are still prospering, as expected of the race that's able to rule the land. King Kuan saw more and more human experts arriving and saw that the other races could only make claims as an equal when added together. This made him sigh ruefully in his heart. Willow Immortal looked at Qin Mu. Human Emperor took out Human Emperor's seal. So what mission do we have this time? Willow Immortal was a woman, and from her name it would seem like she was a willow tree that had turned into a demon, but as a matter of fact, she was a green snake who had the bloodline of the green dragon turned demon. It wasn't known how long she had lived, but even though she said herself to be old, she didn't look it. Humans had at most the lifespan of 800 years, but the lifespan of other races surpassed that limit. Qin Mu could not guess how long Willow Immortal had lived. However, since most of the strong practitioners had fought along with Village Chief before, they couldn't be too young. The other immortals, White, Yellow, and Rat, were all men, with Fox being the only other woman. Intercept high heavens. Qin Mu surveyed his surroundings and said, "Fellow senior brothers and senior sisters, I guess you have already seen the stone statues and treasures in eternal peace, right? The gods of high heavens will come forth to release natural disasters in the treasure and activate the astronomical phenomenon. Earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and tempests will all rush through the land. It is certain that all of your clansmen will find it hard to survive through that as well." Everyone scrunched their eyebrows. On their way, they had indeed noticed numerous stone statues, and if it truly was as Qin Mu said, when the disaster burst forth, their people would be unable to avoid being wiped out as well. Before I came, I brought over a treasure that had appeared from underground. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a look, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said. He took out a Taotai sack and carefully opened it, while circulating his magic power to lift up a red circular cauldron before carefully placing it on the ground. Everyone surrounded and examined it in detail. The cauldron was vermilion red in color, and there were flames spilling out from inside it. Time and time again, balls of flame would burst forth and float around the cauldron. It had an area of 6 areas, and in the center, there was an opening which was sealed tightly by a huge cover. Sealing runes were all around it. There seemed to be boundless terrifying power inside the cauldron that was continuously trembling. The hall was also trembling continuously while the glazed roof tiles on the roof were rattlings in a regular pattern. The entire manor was trembling while the trees were shaking gently around it. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was extremely careful, as though he was scared of activating the violent energy in the cauldron. "This is Earthquake Cauldron." Tuxing Feng stood by the huge cauldron, then walked 2 rounds about it. His voice was like thunder when he said, "Earthquake Cauldron contains the power of an earthquake, and if it's unleashed, tens of thousands mountains in Eternal Peace Empire will be razed to the ground. My ancestor had once forged this kind of treasure on the Emperor's order and used it to collect the energy of earthquakes everywhere." He took out a sharp horn-shaped hammer. The front of the hammer's head was flat while the back was a sharp horn. He hit Earthquake Cauldron with a loud clank. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The manor was fine, but the mountains in a radius of 300 yards from it trembled violently and shook as though they were dancing. The mountain ranges shivered while the earth churned. Mountain rocks shattered and countless trees collapsed in an instant. Hermit Qing Yu was furious and snatched the hammer away. He almost got squashed to the ground by its weight, so he immediately let go while shouting furiously, "3-inch nail, are you crazy?" Tuxing Feng picked up his huge hammer and held it as though it was very light. "I'm extremely familiar with this kind of item, and it's fine giving it a knock. The area nearby is desolate and there's nobody nearby, right?" Qin Mu shook his head. "There's no one living nearby. However, it's best if Chief Tuxing isn't so reckless. Let me try." Black Tortoise Chief Xian Shenggu went forward and said solemnly, 3-inch nail, knock the Earthquake Cauldron. I want to see if I can suppress the shockwaves." Tuxing Feng's eyes lit up, and he smiled. "Black Tortoise Shield is known as the strongest defense, so you might just be able to suppress this Earthquake Cauldron. All right, let us try." Qin Mu was about to stop them when Granny C stretched her hand out to stop him and shook her head gently. She said in a low voice, "Muir, what they respect is Human Emperor's seal and not you, so they won't listen to you." Let them try. If they don't suffer, they won't fight high heavens with you. Qin Mu immediately stopped wanting to dissuade them. Imperial Preceptor, bring this cauldron out and let them try. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's magic power flooded out, and he carefully brought Earthquake Cauldron out of the hall. Everyone went after it, and Su Xingguo with a flying serpent coiled around him stepped forward. He gave a shout, and layers of tortoiseshell runes flew out to seal the area around Earthquake Cauldron. All of them locked together. This formed a system of seals with nearly 100 layers shining with flowing light and overflowing color. Tuxing Feng raised his sharp-horned hammer and knocked heavily on Earthquake Cauldron, which resulted in a world-shaking boom as the energy inside instantly exploded out. The destructive shockwave broke through all 100 layers of Su Shengwu's defense, and his face changed instantly. The black tortoise and the flying serpent shouted in unison as the man revealed his true body, transforming into a huge black tortoise to suppress the shockwave with all his strength. It caused him to cough up blood while his huge body was blown into the sky. Everyone's expression changed, and they each executed their strongest defensive methods to seal the rampant energy with all their strength. In a split second, numerous rumbles rang out as everyone's divine treasures were opened one after another. Their primordial spirits rose as the broken divine bridges stretched across the sky with them on top, and magic power burst forth at the same time, suppressing Earthquake Cauldron together. The energy shockwave calmed down for a moment before erupting once more, blowing all the humongous figures in all directions, smashing them into the surroundings of the manor. Everyone's face went pale white, and they stood up to look at the vermilion cauldron with disbelief. Even though the terrifying energy had been blocked by them, it had injured all of them as well. 3-inch nail, how much power of this Earthquake Cauldron did your hammer activate? Su Xingguo asked loudly as he wiped away the blood on the corner of his mouth and returned to his human form. Tuxing Feng shook his head and said, "It's not even 1% of Earthquake Cauldron's power." Everyone's heart sunk. The strongest people of this world were all gathered here, and they couldn't block even 1% of Earthquake Cauldron's power. If the gods of high heavens came down and activated the full power of such treasures, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor feared that Tuxing Feng would want to fool around once again and quickly put away his Earthquake Cauldron. There are still 17 treasures that are similar to this. They are hard to move, and any carelessness would activate the power within them. One of them is enough to destroy Eternal Peace Empire, so 18 is sure extravagant. King Kuin's gaze flickered as he spoke. This is no longer the matter of humans alone, but a common threat against all races that are living in this world. If the power of the 18 treasures was to burst forth, my people in the sea would also find it hard to escape. All Earth travelers underground would probably die from the tremors, Tuxing Feng said. When the tempest fills the sky, it'll be hard for my people to escape unscathed as well. Queenie echoed him. In that case, Qin Mu surveyed his surroundings and said solemnly, "Let us set off now and intercept high heavens." Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 419, Old Things. Muir, intercepting high heavens is no simple thing, so please don't go, Granny C said in a low voice. Qin Mu was refining spirit pills in a hurry to feed the flood dragons. Since he was leaving for a long trip, he needed to prepare some extra spirit pills. When he heard what Granny C said, he was stunned for a moment before smiling up at her. "Granny, I'm the one who invited them, so how can I not go?" Granny C shook her head and said, "You are only on 6 Directions realm. If you don't go, they won't say anything. For this battle, high heavens will probably mobilize their full force. There's not only the 4 sovereigns of high heavens, but also other gods. If we are defeated, return to great ruins and never come out again." Qin Mu's face dimmed, but when he was about to say something, Village Chief's voice came from the distance. "Old Woman C, don't worry about him. Let him follow." Granny saw Village Chief laughing with the old men and women and couldn't help becoming furious. Muir's cultivation is still low, so he'll be useless even if he goes. "How is he useless?" Village Chief turned back to her with a smile. "There must always be someone to retrieve the corpses. Ain't I right, Granny?" Granny C was slightly stunned, her words drying out. Someone had to retrieve the corpses, no matter if it was the enemy or their own people. Laughter came from far away as a bunch of old men and women laughed loudly. Village chief and his old friends had a wonderful chat. Tuxing Feng spoke about their embarrassing deeds back then, which made everyone burst out into loud laughter again and again, making their faces glow heartily. There were many things to be said between them, about how they fought through life and death situations together, becoming comrades in arms. There was also a past to be reminiscent. After all, ever since Village Chief was crippled, his magnificent aspirations had died, turning him into an old cripple that would just lay in disabled elderly village under the rain and lightning. The traces of the human emperor faded away, and the willpower of all his comrades was also ground away. They no longer appeared in the world and no longer met one another. Now, Village Chief was back, and they had also reconvened because of an invitation. Even if a lot of time had passed, the reunion seemed to return them back to the time when their passion had blazed furiously. Qin Mu looked at them and saw how different all of them were. Some of them were not cheerful people, like Hermit Qin Yu, who had a face like everyone owed him money all the time. Yet even he was full of smiles now. The positions of everyone here were incomparably high. One was a chief of an underground race. Some were immortals that stood high up in the world. Some were great demons worshipped by their people, and another carried their people to roam freely in the sea. People of completely different personalities had all gathered together because of Human Emperor's seal. Let the blood in our hearts burn again, to relive our past and turn it upside down, Village Chief said to everyone in high spirits. Hermit Qin Yu teared up from laughter. Burn your ass. Ain't your lifespan ending next year? Can you still burn? How can the immortals of Little Jade Capital say uncouth words? Say that in Little Jade Capital if you have the ability to. Qin Yu, you don't have many years left to burn as well, so you'll be a goner like me. The old folk laughed loud and stamped their feet. Willow Immortal's eyes narrowed into slits as she gasped for breath while saying, "Do you still remember? When we talked about fighting, little Qingzi would run the fastest, but not to fight, to hide. You weren't any better than me. You always rolled up into a ball." The old people laughed more, poking fun at each other. Little Qingzi even liked Fairy Xue Qi, giving his all to chase after her. That's right, I remember it. This guy's face is super thick. Pa! When Fairy Xue Qi died in battle that day, little Qingzi cried like a man made out of tears. No one laughed at those words, and suddenly, Hermit Qin Yu began to bawl loudly. Tuxing Feng, who had made the atmosphere incomparably awkward, scratched his messy hair. He then sighed and said, "I remember Taoist Lu Feng. We had a close relationship, and he died for me, blocking a sure-kill attack for me." Everyone fell silent. After a moment, they began laughing and chatting again, making the awkwardness earlier vanish. Qin Mu shook his head and executed secrets of dragon control. The flood dragons transformed into behemoths that were several miles long, and everyone boarded them. The manor was left empty. They rode the dragons toward great ruins. On the dragon's back, Butcher threw jars of wine, and the strong practitioners from the past generations hugged them to drink to their heart's content. Laughter rang from time to time, and Butcher raised his wine jar up high while laughing loudly. "Drink 300 cupfuls of wine in glee." On another dragon's back, Cripple cried messily, "I ain't a hero like all of you, just a small-time thief, so why am I acting a hero with you guys?" Old Rulai looked at Old Ma and said in a low voice, "Great Thunderclap Monastery still needs you, so go back. I'll be enough. You are Rulai and I'm also Rulai. You know my thoughts," Old Ma said indifferently. Old Rulai was slightly stunned. "If you and I don't come back, what's going to happen to Great Thunderclap Monastery? What's going to happen to Buddhism?" Old Ma put his palms together, and his face held 20 kinds of enlightenment. "Live up to Buddhism, and it will never let you down." Old Rulai understood his intentions immediately. "Excellent. No matter if there is a Rulai or not, the Dharma is always there. It doesn't exist because of Rulai and it won't die because of Rulai. If they will comprehend, they will become Rulai, and if they don't, they are fake monks." Qin Mu was on the back of another dragon with Village Chief, at whom he couldn't stop looking. In the end, he was unable to hold back. "Village Chief, has your divine bridge been repaired?" Village Chief's wrinkle-filled face revealed a smile, and he said, "How can it be that easy? There are 3 steps in repairing a divine bridge, and each step is harder than the last one. The first step is Secrets of Magpie Bridge, the second step is Secrets of Mysterious Guide, and the third step is Secrets of Divine Crossing. I have cultivated to Secrets of Mysterious Guide, and that's already considered very fast. Qin Mu, has your divine bridge been repaired?" Hermit Qin Mu shook his head. "I'm still on Secrets of Mysterious Guide." Village Chief smiled with exultation as he made fun of him. "You might die trying to intercept high heavens this time. Old bastard, you only know how to curse me." Hermit Qin Mu scolded him. Village Chief laughed loudly. "Heavenly Devil Patriarch, this old youngster is still hurrying here." Everyone laughed again, and the atmosphere was very joyous. The sun set in the west, and the sky gradually turned dark. In high heavens, cryptic and awkward-sounding voice came from the sky above a sacrificial altar. It was the god language, and the modulation didn't seem to be something a human was able to produce. Star Sovereign Xiao, Flower Sovereign, and Star Sovereign Yen listened respectfully. When the god's speech was over, the 3 sovereigns moved back a few steps and said respectfully in unison, "As you command." Everything was calm on the sacrificial altar. The 3 sovereigns under the altar had solemn faces. After a moment, Star Sovereign Yen couldn't resist saying, "Are we really doing this? If we do it, not many people are going to survive in the entire Eternal Peace Empire. We have no choice but to do this," Star Sovereign Xiao said solemnly. Eternal Peace Empire is developing, and Emperor Yanfeng has already forged a divine weapon that could kill Jade Sovereign. The change of the human emperor, the change of the law, and the change of the path have angered those above. If we don't do this, we won't be able to save ourselves. Compared to those lowly life forms in the mortal world, our lives are more important. But those are countless lives, Flower Sovereign said. No need to speak further. Star Sovereign Xiao raised his hand and spoke in an inflectionless voice. We just need to do our responsibility and not question whether it's right or wrong. Wake up the gods of high heavens. There will be a battle. Star Sovereign Yen and Flower Sovereign's expressions were grim. Star Sovereign Yen came to the bugle horn beside the sacrificial altar and blew it. Instantly, a heavy and drawn-out sound spread across high heavens. Do. In high heavens, the mountains were majestic, and numerous strange beasts wandered around them. However, the most eye-catching things were still the majestic sculptures. They portrayed gods that appeared as fantastic oddities of every shape and form. At the sound of the bugle horn, the surface of the statues suddenly cracked, and the stone rapidly changed. Some of it transformed into dead skin that fell off while some turned into flesh and blood. Suddenly, a stone statue that was half bent over and half kneeling smashed its fists on the floor while standing up. What followed was all the stone statues reviving among the mountains. They opened their eyes, and the divine light within them burst into the horizon. Star Sovereign Xiao's gaze was like lightning as he swept the surroundings before shouting, "Receiving official, lay the bridge." In the sky above high heavens, a dazzling golden bridge appeared, and the receiving god official stood upright there, turning a golden-colored compass in front of him which grew brighter and brighter. Instantly, a beam of light shot out, transforming into a golden bridge which penetrated through the barrier between high heavens and the lower world. The corners of Star Sovereign Xiao's eyes twitched, and he suddenly gritted his teeth. "All gods listen to my command. Descend to the world of mortals." The gods rose and transformed into beams of light, following the bridge of light out of high heavens. Instantly, above West Earth, radiant stars streaked across the sky. It was nighttime, and there were 18 shooting stars that dragged their long trails as they broke through the sky and headed toward the east. At night in great ruins, heavy snow was falling from the sky as the young patriarch and elder of discipline sat in a ruin around a bonfire which lit up their surroundings. "It's snowing." Elder of Discipline raised his head and saw snowflakes floating down from the darkness. The winter this year seems to be especially long. The young patriarch used a stick to poke at the firewood, making the fire burn more furiously. As the bonfire crackled, sparks floated up along with the smoke. It's still considered all right. New Year's should already be over, right? The young patriarch smiled. After it, the weather slowly becomes warmer. At that moment, a chuckle suddenly sounded out. Make the fire bigger. I would also like to warm myself. The two looked back and saw a man wearing a conical bamboo hat walking out from the darkness. He only had 9 fingers, and vapor condensed into mist as he breathed out. Dao friend Ling Jing. The young patriarch immediately got up to greet him. Taoist Ling Jing returned his greeting and took off his bamboo hat before stretching his hands to the fire to keep warm. His gaze flickered. Heavenly Devil Dao friend is also answering the call of human emperor and going forward to meet him? The young patriarch shook his head. I'm not meeting with them. I already know what happened, so I'm just waiting here. Even if they don't arrive in time, I can intercept the gods of high heavens first. Dao friend Ling Jing, what about you? Taoist Ling Jing smiled. I hesitated for a long time since I'm not on good terms with many people, like Old Sword God. Look at this finger, it was chopped off by him. But after I thought through it, it all comes down to the promise the ancestor of the human race made. If I don't uphold it, I would fail as a human, so I decided to go and meet them. In that case, there's no need for you to go, the young patriarch said with a smile. You can just wait here. If they don't arrive on time, we can drag it out together. Taoist Ling Jing nodded, and the 3 of them didn't speak again. When midnight came, the snow stopped, and trails of magnificent starlight appeared in the sky, heading east from the west. The young patriarch smiled at Elder of Discipline. Bring Dao friend Ling Jing and my ashes back, if you can still find our corpses. Elder of Discipline bowed. Farewell to the both of you. When he raised his head, the young patriarch and Taoist Ling Jing had vanished, and in the sky, there were 2 more trails of light. They were rising diagonally to intercept the 18 shooting stars. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 420 Vanishing Sounds in the Darkness. The darkness in great ruins was silent yet bustling. The former was for people who had no abilities, hiding in the villages and ruins. If one was powerful enough, the night in great ruins was extraordinary bustling. Walking at that time, one could see all kinds of strange sights and encounter countless supernatural incidents. If there was fate, they could even enter marvelous worlds. Of course, it was another matter regarding if they could come back alive. The night in great ruins was exceptionally charming. Since a snowstorm had just ended, lumps of snow hung on the branches which shone when light landed on them. It was as though the surroundings were adorned with silver clothing. The sky suddenly became incomparably bright, and numerous life forms raised their heads in great ruins. The darkness was suddenly filled with numerous bright colors. But they weren't formed from natural phenomenon. Instead, they were originated from the explosions of magnificent divine arts that burst out into balls of light, lighting up the world. The darkness seemed to be a substance, however. It might get forced back by the lights, but it would flood back every time, filling up the void. The rays of light changed, growing weirder and weirder. The life forms in great ruins saw the stars moving quickly, tussling and battling against one another. The movement of the stars in the sky was very weird. There were 18 at the front and 2 stars behind them. The stars at the front were rushing ahead while the other 2 were chasing and harassing them. Every time the 18 stars stopped and prepared to encircle their pursuers, the 2 stars would run to the west. The 18 stars wouldn't chase, and the 2 stars would then catch up to harass them again. When the 18 stars gave chase once more, the 2 stars would escape with all they had. This happened over and over again, halting the progress of the 18 stars, making it hard for them to unleash their full speed. Beside the bonfire in a ruin, Elder of Discipline looked at that sight, and a slither of hope renewed in his heart. Heavenly Devil Patriarch and Taoist Ling Jing's motive was to delay the gods of high heavens and not clash with them head-on. If they continued with that, there might still be hope of surviving. Suddenly, the stars in the sky dimmed and disappeared. Elder of Discipline's heart sunk. The gods of high heavens had decided to hide their traces, baiting Heavenly Devil Patriarch and Taoist Ling Jing to go search for them. As long as they came forward, they would be encircled. "Don't go!" Elder of Discipline grew nervous, and he grabbed his collar as though he was grabbing his heart. He stared relentlessly at the two stars that were moving in the sky. "Don't go close, don't go close. Quickly run." The two stars moved about in what seemed like hesitation. Suddenly, they also dimmed and could no longer be seen. The sky turned dark once again. The power of those divine arts erupted, and the dark sky was once again lit up with different colors, driving away all the darkness at once. 18 majestic gods and devils could be faintly seen flying above, their faces either solemn or malicious. Their limbs were sturdy, and as the rays of the divine arts fell on their bodies, runes of all colors floated up. The one who was encircled by their attacks was Taoist Ling Jing. Heavenly Devil Patriarch was not with him. Taoist Ling Jing is the bait. Elder of Discipline's heart trembled violently. As the bait, Taoist Ling Jing would surely die. No one could survive after being surrounded by the attacks of 18 gods and devils. Taoist Ling Jing's aim was to use himself as a sacrifice to lure out the 18 gods of high heavens. That would give Heavenly Devil Patriarch a chance to land a sneak attack. Taoist Ling Jing's abilities were extremely powerful. He was also one of the strongest people back in the day, even daring to fight with Village Chief for the title of #1 in the world. However, he was defeated and lost a finger. Yet when it came to launching a sneak attack, he couldn't do much with that. Heavenly Devil Cult's teleportation clothes and teleportation flag were the best methods to go about something like that. If someone lured out the 18 gods out, Heavenly Devil Patriarch could easily launch a sneak attack, which would be their only chance to severely injure them. Ling Jing 8 methods. An inspiring shout came from the sky and shook the hearts of the people. "Cease to exist from now on." Elder of Discipline raised his head to look at the final sight of Taoist Ling Jing. Even though his Ling Jing 8 methods were not inferior to Village Chief's sword picture, they were useless against the attacks of 18 gods. He was simply going to unleash his ultimate art of which he was the proudest. He was like an artist splashing ink as much as he liked to exhibit his talent, like a scholar using all he could to write an essay. He wanted to leave his mark in the world, his shadow. At that moment, a huge flag swept open, and Heavenly Devil Patriarch appeared behind the devil gods, landing lethal attacks on them. The flag swept over him, and his figure seemed to appear beside all the gods at the same time, attacking all of them at the same time. In just an instant, he injured over 10 gods and devils. Thunder rumbled in the sky. When the sounds of the explosion from the divine arts traveled outward, many new attacks had been made. The shockwaves of the divine arts caused the air to be sometimes warm and sometimes freezing cold. Hurricanes swept down from the sky, and the snow melted before coming back just as quick. Heavenly Devil Patriarch's teleportation flag was shredded. It was destroyed in the terrifying shockwave of divine arts, but he still had his teleportation clothing. Elder of Discipline raised his head to look and saw blood raining down from above. It started with a drizzle before becoming heavier and heavier. One of the 20 stars moving in the sky dimmed and wavered. Suddenly, it went out in a fierce collision, falling from the sky. Taoist Ling Jing was dead. Elder of Discipline's face dimmed. Only Heavenly Devil Patriarch was left, and he was still battling. Even if he was skilled in the 7 writings of creations in great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures, it would be hard for him to change the outcome of the battle. In the ruin, Elder of Discipline didn't raise his head to look at the battle in the sky anymore. Instead, he stared at the flames of the bonfire, subconsciously adding more firewood to it. The flames grew taller and taller, and the intensity of the heat also grew, yet he couldn't feel anything at all. Why is this winter so cold? He shivered from the cold and added more firewood. What's wrong with this fire? No matter how fierce it is, it's still so cold. How is it still so cold when I added so much firewood? Another star dimmed in the sky before bursting forth with light again. It was exceptionally gorgeous, lighting up the sky. A marvel of creation. The light and shade it dominates. A shout tore through the darkness, inspiring and shocking. Dong. The melodious sound of a bell came from the sky, rushing in all directions. It faded away soon after, and the marvel of creation ceased to exist. The lights in the sky gradually dispersed, and the darkness slowly came back after the explosion. A star had fallen. Elder of Discipline buried his head in his hands and didn't say anything. He was waiting for daybreak to retrieve the corpses of the two old men. In the sky, the 18 stars paused for a moment before continuing to head east. Great ruins God-broken mountains were sharp as a blade. Their peaks were covered in snow. In the sky, flood dragons were rushing toward them. The wind was strong and blew their whiskers and mane backward. Beside Qin Mu, xianxia was trying to use heart inspection mirror to contact the young patriarch. Moments after, she fell into a daze. Patriarch said that he won't be coming back. He said that you guys don't need to miss him. Qin Mu was stunned, and Granny C turned her face around to secretly wipe away her tears. That old guy actually left earlier than us. Village chief was stumped for words and could only sigh. He's as impatient as ever. They came closer and closer to God-broken mountain range, and their eyes went past, looking into great ruins that were shrouded in darkness. Over there, they could see stars moving in the sky, rushing in their direction. Muer, stop on the mountain, village chief suddenly ordered. Qin Mu gave a command, and the flood dragons lowered their speed. They stretched their bodies while their blade-like claws clasped onto the mountain peaks to stop themselves. With their fluttering whiskers and strong bodies, they crushed numerous mysterious pearl crossbows. The snow was white while the mountains were black. The flood dragons, however, were of all colors like white, black, red, and even sapphire blue. Their bodies shone with light which came from the natural rune markings of their race. They shone upon the snow, giving it a colorful hue. Let's have the battle here. Village chief looked around and asked, "What do you guys think about this place?" King Kun examined his surroundings and said, "Very good. It's just a little cold." Tuxing Feng jumped down from a dragon's back and pulled his clothes tighter around himself. He muttered, "This damned place is still so cold. Being warm underground is still the best. Human Emperor Qin, if you go to the underground world of our Earth travelers, your horizons will definitely expand. The whole underground world is covered in jade glass and thick crystals hanging from the ceiling. There are those with 6 and 8 edges, all clustered together like brightly colored decorations. With the light from the magma reflecting off them, they are so pretty. There are also numerous plants that grow in the magma and taste amazing. They burn your throat like fine wine, but the taste lingers on." "Stop speaking." The serpent on Su Shengwu's shoulder gulped down its saliva. "I'm getting hungry just from your descriptions." Tuxing Feng raised his head to look at the stars that were closing in, and he grabbed his sharp horn-shaped hammer while muttering, "I wonder if I'll have the chance to return underground for another bite. Our underground world still has flaming fruit which is born from the magnetic element force. That taste." Village chief looked at Qin Mu and said, "Muer, bring the dragons and your little wives down the mountain. You are not needed here anymore. Just remember to collect the corpses tomorrow." Qin Mu nodded and called the dragons over. He then brought Si Yunxiang, Hu Linger, and Yan Jingjing down the mountain. In the sky, the stars were getting closer and closer. Are we just going to look at them fighting for eternal peace? Si Yunxiang was not willing to just leave like that. What can we do? Can we really not do anything? We can go to great ruins. Qin Mu's gaze flickered. We can find sun ship and moon ship, but this darkness is blocking our path. However, we have a powerful bodyguard. Where's Surging River Dragon King? Dragon King is here. Under God-broken mountain range, river water churned as a huge dragon rose from the darkness. Coiling himself, he lowered his huge head. "What's your Majesty's command?"